Yo, okay, this is sick. So I can guarantee you that almost every single person who did the Childe boss fight was hoping that Childe as a character would have two elements, mostly because he did it in the boss fight and it was super cool to see that he had a delusion as well, which is his electro element. I'm not saying I'm disappointed with how Childe came out. In fact, I'm very, very happy with how he came out as a character, but I think we were all hoping he would have the electro element as well. Well, if you've ever played Beidou before, then you know that her elemental burst basically makes it so whenever you land a normal or charged attack, you do electro damage as well. And you probably also know that that carries on to other characters. So some guy had the bright idea to use Beidou's elemental burst and use Tartaglia's melee stance, since the melee stance does count as normal and charged attacks. So this basically just means that whenever you're in combat, you can actually play Tartaglia as if he has his delusion out, because you can constantly proc electro-charged damage and be using both elements. But another question you all have for me right now is, Brax, is it worth switching up my Kutching? Brax, should I change my entire team comp for this? Is it worth using over a lot of other team comps? And I'm going to tell you everything I know about it, and so you guys are able to make your own educated decisions on it. As you've probably already noticed, this isn't my normally formatted video. I'm not going to have DPS stats and stuff because I just don't think it's viable to test different characters against each other when they don't have similar stats, but I hope that this information helps you out. So first things first, is this set viable to get? The short answer to that is no, because you have to get Tartaglia, but the long answer to that is yes, because the promoted banner has both Beidou and Tartaglia as some of the promoted characters. If you're trying to whale, you can guarantee Tartaglia after 180 pulls, because he is guaranteed to be pulled if you do not get him your first time on the pity timer. As for Beidou though, she is very common. If you're doing pulls on the event banner, then you should know that she is one of the drop rate up characters. It says 50% chance, but it just means a 50% chance to get one of the 3 featured. It does not mean 50% chance to get Beidou. You have about a third chance after hitting that 50% chance to get Beidou, but it's still kind of high. Now, is it viable to run in your team composition? Honestly, I think it's super fun, but I can't tell you it's worth replacing your other characters for. It really just depends on what you have and how you want to play the game. I can tell you that spamming elemental procs is huge, especially in Spiral Abyss, and you're going to see that in some clips as well. Physical damage really falls off in the late game, and so using these normal attacks while still doing elemental damage and scaling it really high with like elemental mastery, electro damage, and normal damage and stuff like that, it's going to be very helpful. I think the composition and build is very strong, but you do have to give up on the fire elemental resonance if you're using that. The pyro one that gives you 25% more attack, that one's gone. But since we're on the topic of party composition, I can show you guys what I'm running, and then I can show you guys some alternatives as well. The first character that's kind of interchangeable that we're going to talk about is actually Beidou. You're not going to feel like you're Delusion Childe, but you'll still get the same effect with electro procs if you use the free Fischl that you're going to get in this new event. Fischl's Summon Oz is going to be very strong and basically act the same way that Beidou's ult does. It just won't look as cool, and it won't be playable with one of the later sets that I'm going to suggest, so that's the only thing to be aware of. But if you're still trying to get the electro-charged procs all the time and feel pretty cool, then use Fischl instead of Beidou if you don't have Beidou. Unfortunately, Razor doesn't work for this because his stand disappears when you switch off of him, so once you've chosen your first electro character, whether that's Beidou or Fischl, you can actually decide if you want to take a second electro with you or not. If you do have Beidou and you're running Beidou, I would suggest using Fischl as your support and building elemental recharge on her while using Beidou as a secondary DPS. In the example set I'm showing you guys, I'm running double elemental recharge and Favonius Warbow to try to get as much as I can. It's probably a little bit overkill. You might be able to go with the 4 set Noblesse, but it's ultimately up to your playstyle and what you like to do. So the reason to run 2 electro here is that for every electro charge, you're actually generating electro orbs, which will give you some more energy on Beidou and Fischl. This allows you to basically have 100% uptime on electro. If you don't decide to run 2 electro, you can actually run someone like Sucrose or Venti if you have them, and if not, you can totally just choose another support that you like. I'm personally a fan of both Sucrose and Venti because if you run the 4-piece Viridescent Venerer set, then you're going to get all of the perks that go along with it, like increased swirl damage and increasing damage done with the abilities that are in the swirl. So like imagine a world where you're already doing so much damage and then you just do 60% more. The last character you're probably going to want aside from Tartaglia in this party is going to be a healer, and that's just because, you know, healers are good. So I'm going to go over some stuff that I think works great on Beidou for this build in particular, but if you want to know more about how to build Beidou in different ways, definitely check out DS Gaming. He's an awesome dude and he knows a ton about that character. But anyways, what you should be running ideally for this effect to take place is 4 Thundering Fury. I know that on the video it's showing that I'm running 2 Thundering Fury and 2 Scholar, and that was mostly just for energy recharge because I just put Fischl into my team. But the 2-piece set is going to give you the 15% electro bonus, and the 4-piece set is going to give you the electro-charged bonus by 40%, which is going to be huge. If you don't have 4-piece thundering, or if you want to use her melee more, you can actually just go with the 2-piece gladiator 2-piece thundering, but just make sure you have 2 pieces of thundering at least. As far as stats for this, you can kind of just go attack percent and then electro damage in the goblet spot if you choose to. Obviously, if you have a crit rate or a crit damage weapon, you can put the opposite crit version of that in the 5th slot, so that would be like if you have a crit rate weapon, run crit rate artifact. And the reverse. For Tartaglia, I'm actually running a terrible set right now. Don't copy what I'm doing. It's only a placeholder because resin is terrible. You have a couple options for this, but I think one of the strongest sets for Childe right now is the Wanderer's Troop set, because it's going to give you 35% more damage to your charged attack, and that applies to both the bow form and the melee form. Essentially, you're just turning this character into water Kuching, and honestly, it might even be better than Kuching because you get the Riptide damage, which is also AoE on death, so if you want to, you could run Noblesse. I'm not personally a fan, but the 20% more damage to your elemental burst is pretty big. As far as weapons go, I think Rust is kind of just definitively the best 4-star weapon you can get from him, but it is gacha, so I'm currently using Stringless because it gives me elemental mastery, and for this set in particular, I want to proc the electro-charged damage, which means that elemental mastery is going to help me do more damage with this build. If your gacha luck isn't super good and you're free to play, the Raven Bow is another gacha weapon, but it's a 3-star, and so it's much more attainable. This weapon increases elemental mastery, and it increases damage against people affected by Hydra, which is Childe's entire shtick, so it's pretty good. If you're going to build a free-to-play weapon, just go with the prototype Crescent. Honestly, both of the bows suck for this, but Crescent's going to be better because it gives you the base attack percent. The Battle Pass bow is pretty good as well. If you have access to that, definitely try that out because it sucks everyone together, and that's really strong for when you go into melee form and you're using the electro-charge procs over and over. And if you're a god amongst men, just use Skyward Harp. That about wraps up everything I wanted to talk about, except for one last thing, which is Beidou Constellation 1, which actually completely changes the artifacts you should be building on Childe. At Constellation 1, Beidou creates a shield whenever she uses her elemental burst, and that can apply to every character. It only makes about 15% of her health, but it is still super strong because it absorbs electro damage pretty well. If you have Constellation 1 on Beidou, you should absolutely run the Retracing Bolide set on Childe, and the reason for this is that it increases shield strength by 35%, which means that when you switch from Beidou over to Childe during elemental burst, he's going to get a stronger shield, and if you have the 4-piece set, which is what you should go for, you're going to gain an additional 40% normal and charged attack damage, which applies to every single one of Childe's moves, except Elemental Burst. If you build it this way, then you should get insane damage from Delusion Tartaglia. The main artifacts you want to have are a Hydro Damage Cup and a crit damage or crit rate artifact in your last slot. If you have trouble with the shield uptime, you can always give Beidou some more HP by switching one of her attack percent things to HP percent. She's going to take a little bit of a hit to the electro damage she does with her elemental burst, but it will help you stay alive and help you keep your damage up on Childe. That's about all I got for you in this video. I ended up being a lot longer than I expected, so apologies for that, but I hope you guys have learned something new, and I hope you guys get to try out this sick new combination because I absolutely love it. It's 4 a.m., so you probably can't tell, but I am genuinely excited. Anyways, have a wonderful day or night wherever you are watching from, and leave a sub if you enjoyed this content and want to see more. I'll catch you guys later. See ya.